Share your knowledge about the king of Wallachia, Vlad the Impaler, the way he slaughtered the Ottoman Turks and impaled them alive in a wooden stake, and the way he ruthlessly and ferociously defended Europe from the Ottoman Turks. And on the contrary, why did Indian kings have naive and forgiving approach while dealing with all invaders? All right. Yes, we have never spoken about Vlad the Impaler, a very interesting and significant figure in the Europe of the Middle Ages. Vlad the Impaler. The Impaler. What a name, what a sobriquet he had got. So, this person was a warlord. You could call him a king or a ruler in Wallachia, which is in southern Romania. Also, let's take a look at the map. Where's the map? As you all know, I am a very big fan of the map. So let's go to the map. I hope I have it open somewhere. So where is this part of the world? It's obviously in Europe. So let's bring Europe to the forefront, center of the screen. Yeah. So this is Romania, and Wallachia is somewhere here in the eastern or so part of Romania, maybe towards the south of Romania, roughly this region, roughly this part of the world. All right. You can look it up yourselves in greater detail. If yeah, so it's in Romania and in roughly this part of the world. So Vlad the Impaler was a warlord, a voivode of this place in the 15th century, between the 1430s and the 1470s to 1480s. That's his. That's where his lifetime occurred, right? So he ruled over this region 2 or 3 times. The first time was around the late 1440s, then in the mid 1450s and 1460s, and again for a while in the 1470s, right? So it was a turbulent, tumultuous life. He was the son of one of the warlords. His father was also called Vlad the First, Vlad the Second, something like that. And as a child, Vlad the Impaler and his brother, I forget the name, these two kids were taken hostage by the Ottoman Empire in order to make their father behave. So at that time, the Ottoman Empire was a big deal, very big deal, one of the major, maybe the major power in Europe. And it was, well, an occupying invasive power. They had taken over the Byzantine Empire. Yeah. They had taken over the territory of the Byzantine Empire, Anatolia, which was historically part of Greece and the Eastern Roman Empire, and parts of Europe. So let's once again go to the map. So the present day Turkey and the present day Balkan regions, parts of Romania, and the extent and influence of the Ottoman Empire was vast at the time. Okay, so that's how it was. That was the situation at the time. I hope the my image is clear. I hope it's clear. If it is not, let me know and I will try and fix it. I think it's clear, I hope. Yeah. Right. So this was a situation. So the Ottoman Empire was a major power in this region. They were a brutal occupying power. And all these various ethnicities and nationalities in Europe, Eastern Europe, etc., were attempting to free themselves from this horrific, terrifying, brutal, barbaric yoke of the Turks. Right. So one of these freedom fighters was this person, Vlad the Impaler. So like I said, he was hostage for a while, he and his brother, in the court of the Ottomans. The Ottoman Sultan at the time there were two sultans who were in power during the lifetime of Vlad the Impaler. The first one was Murad II, and the second one was Mehmed II. I think he's also known as he's a very significant Ottoman king, right? Mehmed II. So eventually what happens is that this guy Vlad goes back to his country, his territory. He becomes the voivode or the warlord or the ruler of the place, and he wages a conflict. He wages a war against the Ottomans, against the Turks. And sometime in the 1460s, the Turks try to invade his territory. He fights back. He takes the fight to Ottoman territory. He fights a battle against an army made up of Turks and Bulgarians, and he massacres. I mean, he defeats this army. There are more than 20, 30, 40,000 casualties. I don't remember the exact number. And what he does is frightful. What he does is all these dead soldiers and those who were captured, he impales them on wooden stakes in the ground. You take a stake, you put it in the ground, yeah, a spear point kind of thing. You place it in the ground, standing up, and then you impale a human body on top of it. Frightful. It was one of the ways of torturing and executing people. Very painful, very horrible, obviously, very brutal. But Vlad realized that this is the only language the Turks understand. Yeah. So what he did was he impaled, I don't know how many people, tens of thousands, maybe 20, 30, 40,000 Turkish and Bulgarian soldiers in one location. It's like a forest of impaled corpses. So when the Ottomans came again that way, they encountered this incredibly frightening sight. 20, 30,000 of maybe 40,000 of their own troops impaled on stakes in the ground. An entire forest of such impaled corpses. And the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II was extraordinarily impressed. He said that a man, a ruler who can do such great deeds should not be defeated and should be treasured, that sort of thing. So like I said, Vlad knew which language the Turks spoke, and he spoke to them in their language. And eventually it was a tumultuous life. He was defeated a couple of times. He went out of power, then he came back to power. He even fought the Saxons, the Germans, and so on. And over time, what happened is that these stories about him began to proliferate. And that's how he got the title of Vlad the Impaler. And lots of stories of extreme cruelty started spreading, because mainly through the Saxons, the Germans, because he was their enemy too. And when somebody is your enemy, you typically try to indulge in propaganda warfare and try to portray that person as a very barbaric and cruel and evil person. So that's how these stories proliferated. And so that's the thing about Vlad the Impaler. That, in brief, is his life. I think he died in the 1470s. Yeah, at the end of a very eventful life. Now, the thing is this. He belonged to a lineage called the House of the Dragon. I think that's what it was called, the House of the Dragon. And the word for dragon in the Romanian language is Dracul. So he was called Vlad Draculia, Vlad the Dragon. And the Irish writer, the British writer, Bram Stoker, took inspiration from this region, Romania, the Carpathian region, where there are these folk tales of Nosferatu, the vampire, and he tied that with the name of this lineage, Draculia, and he created this character of Dracula, right? The very famous vampire story, Dracula. So that was inspired by the story of Vlad Draculia, Vlad the Dragon. So that, in brief, is the story of Vlad the Impaler. He was ruthless. He defended his country. He defended Europe by extension from the Turks. And he was one of them. He is considered a national hero in Romania, I believe. So he understood what language the Turks spoke. He spoke to them in their language, the language of brutality and barbarity. And maybe Indian kings were a little forgiving. Yeah. We Indians are way too civilized. When you deal with barbarians, you deal with them in their language and in their terms. I think we kind of did not quite get it. So yeah, that's one deficiency our rulers overall typically have had. Not all, but most of them. So that's just facts.